All right. Hi guys. Welcome back to Creator Side Income. This is an episode that I've actually wanted to do for a very long time, but I haven't for a number of reasons. But I want to introduce you to my son, Eli.
Hi.
Eli just graduated from high school, and he has been involved with a number of my reviews and some of the behind the scenes part of doing the reviews for a number of years now. But I wanted to do a special dedicated episode on how to teach kids about money and give them opportunities to learn and grow financially. And so we are going to kind of go back in time, and I'm just going to interview Eli here on this episode and ask him about some of the things he's done in the past to earn money, but then what has he done with that money? And so this is a financial literacy episode, which I haven't even done one of those for me yet, and I probably should. But for any creator who is earning money, we want to know what are the best ways to spend that money, to save and invest that money. And because I've been doing that with 4 children for the last 18 years, I thought there was a little bit that I could share, but a lot you could actually learn from Eli because he's doing pretty good. So Eli, let's start with first, if you're willing to disclose, how much money do you think you have and where is that money?
Like what my net worth is right now?
Yeah.
I'd say it's probably a little under 5,000.
Okay. And the reason it's a little under 5,000 is because you just did.
I just made a deposit for mission for my church.
Yeah, so he actually, a tradition in our church, and a very good one, I think, is when you graduate from high school, you have the opportunity to go on a 2-year mission, and you're serving the people to wherever you're assigned to labor, and also teaching them about Jesus Christ, which is a really cool thing. I experienced it when I was a kid. It was a formative experience in my life. Eli had that same opportunity. The catch is you have to pay for your mission, but it is subsidized by the church. And so it's the same cost for every person. And it's actually very affordable when you think you're living somewhere for 2 years. The total cost is only $12,000, which is fantastic. Now, we told Eli that we were willing to pay for it, but he said, I want to have skin in the game, which is actually one of the first rules of financial literacy is if you do not spend your own money, you can do hypotheticals all day long and you're not going to learn much or as much. So if you're playing stock market games, it's not as good as actually playing the stock market and having money invested. And so Eli said, I want to have skin in the game. We decided together, well, why don't you pay half? We'll pay half. So he raised $6,000. How did you raise that $6,000? And you can tell the whole story if you want.
Okay. I've been doing jobs and stuff my whole life. You helped me with the stock market, but when I started high school, COVID shut all the schools down, and I wasn't really able to get jobs in town. And I also didn't have a car. So I started a lawn care business in our neighborhood, and I did that all 4 years of high school with different amounts of clients throughout it. I think the most I ever had at one time was 7. And I'd work at each house, 1 a day, 2 on Saturday, so I didn't have to work on Sunday. And then I also bought and partially restored a 1967 Mustang and flipped that and was able to sell that for $5,500 when I initially bought it for $2,000 and put about $1,000 materials into it and tools. Then I also did small side jobs in the stock market.
Well, let's back up for a little bit. The big picture thing here is when we look at high school, never have had a W-2 job, meaning you never had a boss, you were only your own boss. Mm-hmm. So freelance work as a lawn care specialist, you did that by hustling, going door to door, getting your own clients, and then word of mouth, right? And most of your clients were word of mouth. You did a good job, so you got more clients. What was a typical amount of time you'd spend on a lawn, and how much would you get paid?
By the end, at least, I was getting paid about $20 an hour for most, not all. My rates would vary a little bit depending on the client. I'd usually do, I'd say, about 2 hours a day. It sometimes varied because I had a couple 14-hour work days once for one of my clients, but for the most part, it was just 2 hours.
And those 14-hour work days, that's when you were laying irrigation line, right, and doing things on the farm. So you'll notice that when you do freelance, bread and butter here was mowing lawns. That was dependable, it was regular, It paid the same.
Yes.
The only big variables were wind and rain, right? And so sometimes it was harder. You could count on that and pay generously. And the reason I went back and we talked about all this is because if there are any kids watching this or parents who have kids, the thing that I didn't understand, because I did stuff like this when I was a kid. I had a paper route, I mowed lawns, I did a bunch of different things. And I didn't realize that adults were paying me more than they were actually paying other adults because they were so impressed that kids were willing to work. And I think that's even more so the case today. If I went door to door and asked to mow lawns, I don't think I would get the same amount that you got paid.
Yeah.
Because people want to support kids. And so that's really cool. I actually tell a story to my students at school about when you remember when you raised goats, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he raised a goat one summer, didn't make very much money. The hourly rate on that, when you added it all up, I think we added it up, it was like $4 an hour. It wasn't very good. The next summer, he didn't want to do it, but his friends did, so he agreed to do it. And when he sold his goat, he sold it for much better. And that summer it was like $20 to $30 an hour. He made a lot more the second year. But the reason he made more the second year is because the person who bought the goat didn't need goats. It was I'm going to get emotional here. It was a neighbor who was so excited to see young men in our neighborhood who were willing to work. And he saw them out walking the goats and feeding the goats. And so he ponied up and paid way more than the goat was worth. And it was a goat that he didn't even want or need. He just donated it. But he paid this guy a lot of money because he was investing in the future in this next generation. And what I think is, and we see this with lemonade stands and with everything else, you know, somebody's trying to sell a 50-cent lemonade, but often people will stop and pluck down $5 for that lemonade because we care about these kids who are out willing to work hard. So you saw that during high school. That's why you didn't have to get a traditional job, yet you were able, if we do the quick math, with the over $5,000 you have now and the $5,000 or $6,000 you put towards your mission, end high school with over $10,000 in savings. Like, that's not the money he earned, that's what was left after he spent money on dating and getting things you want and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So to graduate high school with over $10,000 in savings, that's pretty impressive. Think back to when you were a small child. When's the first time you remember earning money, and what did you do? How much did you get paid?
There was a lightsaber. I think 6 at the time, but it was $30, lit up, made sounds and stuff. And I wanted it, and you guys said that if I saved up, I could buy it. Quite a while. It's like a couple of months, I think. I was worried it wasn't going to be in the store anymore, but it was. It was very fulfilling to have saved up for something big, at least at the time, and then be rewarded with it.
So the thing we want to point out here, parents, is if your kids want something, sure, you can put it on the wish list and give it to them for their birthday or for Christmas, or you can help them earn it. Now, I think you understand this, but when we give our kids jobs, you know, if they're going to mow our lawn or if they're going to clean the bathroom, they have their normal chores that they're not paid for. So they have to do all those things. And then if they want to work towards something, we're going to be actually, and I know everyone does this differently, but this is my opinion. We pay them even better than we would pay for a normal job. Let's do weeding. I had to do a ton of weeding growing up. If they've done their normal weeding for the week, we did a half hour this morning. If they've done that, that's great. If they're willing to work for another half hour, a really good pay for a half hour of weeding would be like $5 or $6. That'd be more than minimum wage, right? So $5 for a half hour, that's $10, which is better than our minimum wage currently. But would we pay you $5 for a half hour?
No.
No, we'd probably pay you about $10, right? Yeah. So we pay really, really well so that so our kids will want to work, and it's getting them towards that financial goal. And so they can, if they're willing to do the work, they get there really fast, and we provide those opportunities. Now, that's a little bit of a financial burden for us, but we feel like it's worth it rather than gifting them more stuff and having them feel entitled and getting lots of presents all the time. If they have, again, skin in the game here and they're working towards it, we help them. And think of the other things that you've saved up and earned for before you were like 16. Can you think of, so we have a lightsaber. What else did you earn before you were 16?
Mustang.
Oh, that's right. He bought his Mustang when he was 14. So
Yeah.
almost 15. I guess you were technically 15, but you earned the money when you were 14,
Yes.
right? So he saved up $2,000 as a 14-year-old in that first summer, and that was mowing lawns, doing irrigation, raising a goat, stuff like that. All right, so go back further, though. What
Okay.
else? All right.
Well.
You did a robot, right? That little robot
Oh
walking
yeah, yeah. I bought a robot dinosaur. I bought a couple big Lego sets.
Okay, Lego sets.
Some stocks.
Okay. We'll talk about that next.
Okay. Oh man, I'm struggling to think now. I bought a lot of books.
Yeah.
Like a couple hundred.
Yeah, and he's not paying full price on these books.
Yeah,
These
no.
are thrift store books, but that's an important value that we have in our home. And so that was always, as I would go out looking for books, he would come along. I just wanted you to hear some of the things he saved up for, because again, if we think of major Lego set, robot, these are things that would have been major Christmas presents. But our kids didn't have to wait till Christmas, and we didn't have to stress out about, will we be able to afford it? Will it be a good deal, etc. Because we gave them opportunities to work, they could get anything they wanted. And that's one of the things we learned from Rich Dad Poor Dad, is the question isn't, why can I not afford this? It's, how can I afford this? And so we try to make those opportunities available to our kids. Also, since I just brought it up, do you remember anything from Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Well, my favorite story was when his dad told him to make money, and he literally went and got toothpaste and melted the lead down to make money, and that just showed me, like, make it happen. Like, don't just, like, you don't need to follow traditional means, I guess, to get your money.
And I simply bring this up to let you know that part of the financial literacy that comes to adults and to children, you have to find someone who's done it. And if you don't know anyone, books are a good place to start. For me, it was Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, 10 Differences Between the Middle Class and Really Rich People. I can't remember that. It's Cameron Evans or something like that. 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me About Life and Wealth. And because no kid in his right mind is going to read that on their own, the way I introduced it to Eli was bedtime stories. So we still read stories to our kids as they get older. It just means before they go to bed, we'll either read or listen to a book together, and we'll talk about it. And some of these lessons, similar to what we're doing right now, talking about money, the hope is that as we talk about these things, our kids get ideas and initiate things on their own. So that's where we started. You mentioned the stock market. Do you remember when you bought your first stock?
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't, so talk about it.
I think I was 6. I was little, but you came up to me and said that if you pay half of it, you'd pay the other half for a Disney stock, which I didn't know what stocks were at the time. When you explained to me, it was like a share in a company. And I think I actually sold that a few years ago, but then rebought it more recently.
Okay.
But at the time it was $30, which is crazy. And I paid $15 for it. You did, and I got an envelope from Disney to vote on like the board, and I'm like, oh, I own part of this.
Yeah.
And I hold on to that stock just to get those letters today. But yeah. That was the first one I remember.
Back in the good old days, when you would buy a stock for your child as a custodian, right? So I would set up an account for my child with whatever the broker is online. I think we used it's E-Trade now, and someone else owns it, Morgan Stanley or something. But I think at the time it was another name of another company that was owned by an online bank, and it has gone through different things. We simply found, and you can Google this, how do I buy a stock? And a lot of kids today use apps like Robinhood and other similar things, and you can buy stocks paying very small fees and even partial stocks and start investing in companies. Now, we have always worked with Vanguard and E-Trade just because when I was researching 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when I was starting to invest, they were low fees and easy to use. With our children, we heard that, if you get like a Disney stock, you can actually get like a certificate and they can put it in their room as their first stock. And I believe when you did that, that wasn't available, but we still printed one out. Like I found an image online and we made a Disney stock and we put it up so you could be proud of being a partial owner. I forgot that, yeah, you legit get mail now from when they vote on different things for the different companies. How has your stock portfolio grown over time and how have you contributed to it? Kind of what is the state of your account?
Well, every time I would take money to the bank, you would always tell me that if I wanted to, I could put some into the stock market. So I would buy some shares here and then, but over COVID, when the stock market crashed, our family put quite a bit more money into the stock market, and I think I put $500 in the summer of 2020, and that was just because I think it was Warren Buffett. He said, "Be greedy when other people are wary, and wary when other people are greedy." So like
Fearful.
fearful. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
be greedy when they're fearful and fearful when they're greedy.
Yeah. So over that amount of time, I bought most of the stocks that I own, but I still put money at least into the account. Not necessarily buy stocks, but just have it there, good to go. And I think it's like the overall worth with the money and the stocks is about $1,500. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
That's
I think
about
so.
what it is.
So a few things. So I'm glad we're having this talk. Similar to opportunities at home to earn money, Eli has also had many opportunities to get a match when he goes to the stock market. So there are different times, depending on how much disposable income we have, where we're making more investments, and we'll say, hey kids, up to $25 or up to $50, if you want to put any money in the stock market right now seems to be a good time to invest. We'll match you up to 50% or things like that. And so we've done that several times, and you've taken advantage of that. Over COVID, you mentioned the market didn't technically crash, but it was definitely down. And the reason we had money to invest during that time, we actually gifted you money. So at that time, it wasn't your own money, it was the money we gifted to you. And it's because there was a stimulus for families because times were really hard at the time. So the government had been providing stimuluses to families, and they did it a few times over COVID. Well, we were doing quite well financially at the time, but we knew inflation was coming. And so rather than do what way too many people did at that time and took that stimulus to buy a toy or to go on a vacation or to do other things, we took almost all that money from the stimulus and put it into real estate and investments. And so, which has paid off really well. We gave each of the kids, I think, $100 one time and $150 another time, so $250. And then they did put a little bit money of their own, but that money has more than tripled in the 4 years since. And so the neat thing is, and I have looked at it, I think you do have a net worth of about $1,500 in the stock market. The total amount you've put in without matching is like $200.
Really?
Yeah, without matching. We've matched some and we've gifted some. Total what you've put in is about $500. But a lot of that was matched or gifted. So it doesn't take a major commitment, but you feel like you're invested, right? You feel and you have ownership. You don't do a lot of research on the different stocks and what's available, but there were a few you picked that I didn't pick for you that you looked at on your own, so that's worked well. Anything else financial that I've skipped?
Oh, yeah. So this wasn't anything financially that I did, but when you talked with Mom about financial things, you would make it very easy for us to listen in on those conversations so that we'd overhear that. It wasn't like you would talk about that once we'd all gone to bed. Like you weren't like open about bills and like the very fine details, but like the general stuff you talked about it.
Yeah, that's a parenting strategy that we use actually. And you probably, if I asked you, I'm curious. Plug yours for a second. The car. I think he's gonna say the car. Okay. So where like physically are you location wise when you overhear these conversations? Are there any places where you're more likely to hear me and Mom talk about money or other personal kinds of things?
Yeah, the car.
I told you. We do that on purpose. If there are important things that we want our kids to understand, but they're not typically talked about, or maybe our kids wouldn't ask questions on their own, but we want them to kind of be aware of certain things. We often, especially road trips or longer, there are times when we're driving an hour or 2 hours, we'll bring things up in the car and we'll definitely do it so our kids can overhear. And so sometimes we talk about investments or our financial future, our goals. Sometimes we talk about how to maintain relationships or improve relationships with other people. Sometimes we talk politics or religion, and we want our kids to overhear those conversations. So maybe we'll end this. This is turning into a really long conversation, but these are some things that I think are significant. As far as creator side income, am I happy that I've tripled my income in the last few years? Of course. But my real investment is in these people. We have 4 of them. And as he's graduated high school and he's going on a church mission and he has a full ride to college when he comes home, I feel like we played a small part in that, and so I want you to hear the stories. And so I don't know if this is super valuable. I'm curious. We don't have a lot of subscribers on this channel right now, but if you want more of this kind of content, or if you have specific questions for Eli, he's going to be here for a few more months. Let me know in the comments, and we'll see about maybe doing a follow-up interview. Okay? So that's all. Bye.